So thank you for joining us for the release of the 2012 International Religious Freedom Report. The Secretary will make some brief remarks, and then we will turn it over to Ambassador Johnson Cook, who will make remarks and also take some of your questions. With that.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. How are you? Well, thanks for being here today for the release of the 2012 International Religious Freedom Report. I'm pleased to be here with our Ambassador at Large, Susan Johnson Cook, and I want to thank her and her entire cohort here for their terrific work in helping to put this together. They are doing a superb job of advancing religious freedom abroad. I also want to acknowledge the hard work of a whole bunch of State Department employees, both here in Washington and a lot of posts around the world, because all of them collect the information and do a lot of work throughout the year in order to be able to put this report together. This is not a 1 or 2 week affair. It's a long 1-year process, ongoing. 15 years ago, I was very proud to join my colleagues in the United States Congress in passing the International Religious Freedom Act, the law that mandates the preparation of this State Department report. This report, as many of you know, shines light on the challenges that people face as they seek nothing more than the basic religious freedom, the right to worship as they wish. And its release here today is a demonstration of the abiding commitment of the American people and the entire U.S. government to the advancement of freedom of religion worldwide. Freedom of religion is a core American value. It's one that helped to create our country. It's been at the center of our national consciousness since the 1600s, when the Pilgrims fled rebellious religious persecution and landed in my home state of Massachusetts. And many of these folks settled in the city of Salem, which takes its name from the word salam, or shalom, meaning peace. But before long, even there, religious strife visited their hometown. Women were accused of witchcraft, and some were burned at the stake. Emerging differences between religious leaders in Massachusetts led some congregations to break away and to found new settlements in what would become Connecticut and Rhode Island. Providence was founded by people who wandered through the woods the entire winter and came out on this expanse of water and named it Providence for obvious reasons. So we approach this issue, I certainly do, mindful of our past and of how, as Americans, we have at times had to push and work and struggle to fully live up to the promise of our founding. John Winthrop, who happens also to be my granddad from 10 generations back, was born in England, but his passionate faith and his disagreements with the Anglican Church inspired him to lead a ship full of religious dissidents to come to America to seek freedom of worship. And on the deck of the Arabella, he famously said in a sermon that he delivered before they landed, "For we must consider that we shall be as a city upon a hill. The eyes of all people are upon us." And they have been, and they remain there. And though we are obviously far from perfect, no place has ever welcomed so many different faiths to worship so freely as here in the United States of America. It's something we can be extraordinarily proud of. But freedom of religion is not an American invention. It's a universal value, and it's enshrined in our Constitution and ingrained in every human heart. The freedom to profess and practice one's faith, to believe or not to believe, or to change one's beliefs, that is a birthright of every human being, and that's what we believe. These rights are rightly recognized under international law. The promotion of international religious freedom is a priority for President Obama, and it is a priority for me as Secretary of State. I am making certain, and will continue to, that religious freedom remains an integral part of our global diplomatic engagement. The release of this report is an important part of those efforts. This report is a clear-eyed, objective look at the state of religious freedom around the world. And when necessary, yes, it does directly call out some of our close friends, as well as some countries with whom we seek stronger ties. And it does so in order to try to make progress, even though we know that it may cause some discomfort. But when countries undermine or attack religious freedom, they not only unjustly threaten those whom they target, they also threaten their country's own stability. And we see that in so many places. Attacks on religious freedom are therefore both a moral and a strategic national security concern for the United States. I also want to note that this report was informed by a broad spectrum of contributors: faith leaders, religious organizations, and journalists. Some of these individuals showed immense bravery in coming forward and sharing their observations, and their stories show that we as an international community have a lot of work to do. The report chronicles discrimination and violence in countries ranging from established democracies to entrenched dictatorships. It documents that governments around the globe continue to detain, imprison, torture, and even kill people for their religious beliefs. In too many places, governments are also failing to protect minorities from social discrimination and violence. The report identifies global problems of discrimination and violence against religious groups, including Baha'is, Buddhists, Hindus, Jews, Christians, Muslims, and Sikhs. One troubling trend identified in the report is the potential rise of anti-Semitism. So today I would like to announce that I have named Ira Foreman to the position of Special Envoy to monitor and combat anti-Semitism. Ira has long been a champion of fair treatment for all, and he has worked extensively to combat intolerance. On top of that, he's also a great guy, and I look forward to supporting him in this vitally important mission. So welcome aboard, Ira. Lastly, another troubling trend is the increasing use of laws governing blasphemy and apostasy. These laws are frequently used to repress dissent, to harass political opponents, and to settle personal vendettas. Laws such as these violate fundamental freedoms of expression and religion, and we believe they ought to be repealed. And because we defend others' rights of expression, we are also ensuring that we can express our own views and practice our own faith without fearing for our own safety or our own lives. That is why, as I travel the world, I do press leaders to do more to safeguard freedom of belief and to promote religious tolerance. And that is why I urge all countries, especially those identified in this report, to take action now to safeguard this fundamental freedom. While this report underscores the challenges to religious freedom, it is also true that it is harder than ever to restrict human freedom. It has never been easier in all of human history for people to share their views, to find information, to connect with others, even to send messages of desperation that ask for help or that shed light on abuses that are taking place because of instant communication. So while serious challenges to religious freedom remain, I also could not be more optimistic about the prospects for freedom around the world, because there are great prospects for accountability around the world. So I thank you very much. I want to turn the floor over to Ambassador Susan Johnson Cook, who will explain further what the elements of this report are. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Excuse me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. It's an honor to serve you. Good morning. The 2012 International Religious Freedom Report provides a factual rendering of the status of religious freedom around the world. Religious freedom is essential for a stable, peaceful, and thriving society. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights enshrines the freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. This is the standard against which we assess religious freedom in the International Religious Freedom Report. This report seeks to advance religious freedom by shining a spotlight on abuses and violations. As Secretary Kerry said, when a country fails to provide equal protection of religious freedom for all, the groundwork is laid for political instability and sectarian violence. When a government favors one group or set of beliefs and restricts the rights of others, some in society may take that as tacit approval to further target marginalized groups. As this report makes clear, much work remains to be done. Secretary Kerry just described some of the most troubling trends, and please let me note some others. Thousands of people around the world are jailed because of what they believe or don't believe. In Iran, more than 116 Baha'is are in prison for teaching and expressing their faith, and many Christians, Sufis, and Sunnis are facing similar treatment. Additionally, a Christian pastor named Saeed Abedini, who is an American and Iranian citizen, was sentenced to 8 years in prison just for his beliefs. In Eritrea, people are detained on account of their religious beliefs. Some have reportedly died due to torture or lack of medical treatment. We seek the release of all individuals detained or imprisoned because of their beliefs. Many governments fail to prosecute the perpetrators of crimes motivated by religious animosity, creating a climate of impunity that fueled further discrimination and violence. In Egypt, the government failed to appropriately investigate and prosecute perpetrators and often did not effectively intervene when sectarian violence arose. In Pakistan, religious minorities continue to encounter societal discrimination and violence, and authorities frequently fail to arrest the perpetrators. As sectarian violence claims more lives each year in Pakistan, over 200 Shia were killed in the first 2 months of this year alone. In Nigeria, elements of the extremist sect Boko Haram claim the lives of both Christians and Muslims. The government response has involved gross violations of human rights of the civilian population and deepened impunity. Governments must fulfill their responsibility to condemn religious intolerance and bring to justice perpetrators of abuses. Just last month, I traveled to China, where I pressed government officials to uphold the right to religious freedom for all and to stop abusing this universal right. The government restricts the practices of many groups, including Tibetan Buddhists, Uyghur Muslims, unregistered Christian congregations, and Falun Gong practitioners. In 2012, 83 Tibetans chose to self-immolate to protest Chinese policies. The total number now is over 100. We urge governments to protect the rights of all to hold, express, or change their faith without fear. In Syria, the government targeted faith groups it deemed a threat, including members of the country's Sunni majority and religious minorities. Such targeted included killing, detention, and harassment. Syriac Orthodox Archbishop Yohani Ibrahim and Greek Orthodox Archbishop Paul Yaziki were kidnapped April 22nd by persons unknown and still remain missing. Societal intolerance against religious minorities is on the rise. Too often, this intolerance finds expression in acts of violence, vandalism, and desecration. In Iraq, extremists target religious ceremonies, leading people not to attend services out of fear for their safety. And sectarian violence directed at Muslims spread to central Burma in March 2013, resulting in casualties, displacement, and the destruction of places of worship. Anti-Semitic rhetoric persists in some Middle Eastern media and too often appears in public discourse in some countries in Europe, especially where anti-Semitic parties have gained seats in parliaments. We continue to see violent attacks against Jews in Europe, and I look forward now to working with my new colleague, Ira Foreman, who was introduced to you by Secretary Kerry. I look forward to working with him to combat this pernicious problem. Anti-Muslim sentiment and discrimination are evident in places as diverse as Europe and Asia. We call on societies and governments to foster tolerance and hold perpetrators of violence accountable. We also partner with members of international communities to support religious freedom, to protect religious minorities, and to safeguard freedom of expression. We particularly advocate engaging women and youth on religious freedom, as their voices are a positive force for change. Violations of religious freedom easily capture the world's attention. So I therefore want to highlight some positive developments that tend to fly under the media radar. Although government restrictions on religious freedom remain in Vietnam, the government took a step forward by allowing large-scale worship services with more than 100,000 participants. Turkey, they loosened its restrictions on religious attire, allowing female students to wear headscarves in certain religious classes and in certain Islamic schools. As you will see and read, the challenges are daunting, but we remain committed to working tirelessly to ensure religious freedom for all. I thank you, and I will be happy to take your questions.
Ambassador Johnson Cook has a few minutes for a couple of questions. Why don't we start with...
Thank you, Ambassador. The State Department has been issuing these reports for a long time. Apart from shaming publicly these countries, if they can be shamed, have you detected any change in their behavior over the years? And how does the State Department deal with allies like the Secretary mentioned, like Turkey, Israel, and Saudi Arabia, who have been practicing religious intolerance in varied degrees?
Well, for the first part of your question, in some cases there is change in progress. As I noted in the closing, there was progress in certain countries. Specifically, there is also places where the trends are not increasing and not doing well, and they're going downward. So we look at the countries that of particular concern that you're talking about that continue to have egregious, ongoing, systematic acts. And so we use different tools. Sometimes they're sanctions, sometimes they're put on the CPC list. It depends on what happens. But we hope that people will take small steps for progress, because what we ultimately want is religious freedom for all in every country.
Lala?
Thank you for doing this. Secretary in his opening remarks mentioned about Hindus, Sikhs, and Buddhists increasingly facing protest or their religious freedom are being attacked under various countries of the world. Do you know which other countries, have you identified the countries where Hindus, Sikhs, and Buddhists are facing problems in exercising their right to religious freedom?
Well, there's several countries. I think I'll refer you to the report because there's several countries. We don't want to highlight one particular one. Is there a country that you have a particular concern about?
I have seen some media reports about Pakistan, Afghanistan, about Hindus and Fijis. Do you know any other country where?
Well, in those particular countries, we certainly are concerned about religious minorities, Hindus as well as others. And so we press the governments, we urge the governments to allow religious freedom for all.
Samir?
Can you tell us what's new, what's different from the previous report, and is there any countries you consider sanctioning them?
Well, this is the report for 2012, and so every year I refer you to the report in terms of how they progress. I would say there are certain countries that we're looking at, as we cited in the end of my remarks, like Vietnam, who have made progress in terms of allowing large places of worship. I think each country has its situations, and there are countries that are doing very well. I had the fortunate opportunity to visit Saudi Arabia and China, who have been on the countries of particular concern list, as well as Uzbekistan. And so we try to make small steps. There's some governments that are not moving whatsoever, and particularly in Saudi Arabia, they don't allow non-Islamic persons to have freedom of religion. So each year is situational, and we progress, and we look at all 199 countries, and I think the report will speak for itself.
So do you see progress by the Saudis?
They don't allow any non-Islamic persons to have religious freedom, so I don't see progress there.
Like last report?
Their report is very close to where it was last year, very much so. What happened was, though, I was allowed a visit, and so that's the beginning. We want to continue to be engaged with them.
Yes, please. Ambassador, the Secretary raised the issue of blasphemy. As a matter of fact, become an issue even in a place like Egypt, for example, when Coptic Egyptians, beside Coptic Egyptians, even Muslims sometimes face this charge of blasphemy. How we are going to handle this issue, or record it, or even make a report about it?
Well, at all high levels, our government has been involved in Egypt, since you cited that, at all high levels across government. We're very concerned. We want to hold accountability for those who are perpetrators of violence. We want to make sure that there's protection of religious minorities, including Coptic Christians, especially Coptic Christians, and where there's possibility for reform of laws, we want that to happen. Egypt, as you know, is dealing with the new constitution. As we see it right now, there's not much room for religious freedom, but we continue to press the government, and as I said, at all levels, high levels, our government has been intervening there.
Thank you. Burma's president is here today in the White House, and so in Pakistan, new prime minister will be there tomorrow. My question is on these two countries. Before I will follow one question, that do you see any change in Burma, or what message you think this report will have for the president of Burma today while he's in U.S. And also, as far as Pakistan is concerned, as I said, the new Prime Minister, Mr. Nawaz Sharif, who is very close to the religious people in Pakistan. Do you see any change under his administration, since he will be the third time Prime Minister of Pakistan?
Okay. Let me just say again, the report is for 2012. In Burma, we didn't see any improvement in religious freedom. And as long as there's no improvement in religious freedom, the sanctions will still remain in terms of religious freedom. In terms of Pakistan, there's a new government, it's new leadership, and I think it remains to be seen how he will handle it. As the question previously, blasphemy is very important to us, and there are many who are being held in prison still, Ajia Bibi and others, about 20 others who are in prison because of their belief. So we have to see what this new government will do. We certainly encourage him and will urge him to, again, hold accountable the perpetrators of violence and to make sure that there's protection of religious minorities. And so that's going to be very important. Human rights is a very high priority for this administration.
And finally, Madam, on India, how much advice have you taken as far as this report is concerned from the International Freedom Religious Commission, or the U.S. Commission on Religious Freedom? Because this commission has once again addressed and also is urging the State Department that visa should not be issued to Mr. Narendra Modi, who is the Chief Minister of the Indian state of Gujarat, who is seeking to come to the U.S., but some of these groups here, including this commission, are still against his arrival in the U.S.
Well, thank you for your question. The United States Commission on International Religious Freedom, to whom you referred, is an independent commission, also mandated by Congress, but they're an independent commission, so that their references and suggestions are certainly taken into account when we do our reports, but in terms of what they designate, I refer you to the United States Commission on International Religious Freedom, or you, sir.
Let's do one last question.
If I could follow up on Burma, please. The report mentions that there have been these political changes, this sort of opening up of society and the political system somewhat, and yet you see no improvement in the religious restrictions there. And on the contrary, you've actually seen a sort of spike of religious violence targeting various groups in that country. And this question might even apply to other countries in Egypt and so forth, where there have been political transitions that seem to have led to increased religious tension or violence. Is that your sense, and why would that be?
Well, it's not for me to determine what my sense is. I guess what you're asking is, why does this continue to happen in these countries? As we said, in Burma particularly, we see societal and economic some reform there, but as religious freedom, we haven't seen much reform. At high levels, again, our secretary went and our assistant secretary and others went there. We continue to try to engage their government on religious freedom, but at this particular time, there has not been an improvement there. We want to look at, I think the immediate cause is looking at what are the root causes, the systemic causes of this, and we will continue as an office to do that for all 199 countries and watch the trends. Again, we take our information from many sources, but we will monitor the situation closely, and where possible, where there's diplomatic engagement possibilities, we will certainly engage.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Ambassador.
Thank you.
Thank you, madam.